Hey guys, my name is Tom and I'm going to be tutoring this month's Fundamentals to Psychology course. So today I'm going to give you a little idea of what the course is like. So I'm going to go over Popper's falsification theory, just so you understand a little bit more of what the course entails. So Popper's theory consists of two separate stages. The first stage is creating the theory, which is known as the context of discovery. And the second stage is actually the strict form of testing the theory, and that is known as the context of justification. And Popper's whole idea is that a theory must be falsifiable in order to be scientific. And that's really the goal. So when you produce a theory, it doesn't have to be based on observations, and it really shouldn't be based on observations. It can be based on anything. So for example, a theory can come to you in a dream, or it can just be an idea. So he believed in the use of deductive reasoning, so coming up with a theory and then testing it, rather than induction, which means looking at observations and through these observations coming up with a theory. And he believed that induction was impossible because there's no way that you can observe all the possible examples of a specific set. So Popper is actually considered a rationalist because he believed in this idea of deductive reasoning. However, he does differ from a lot of other rationalists because he does believe that the ratio is falsifiable. So he does believe that these theories can be falsified, and he really emphasizes that. So the second part of his theory is actually the falsification criteria. So as I mentioned earlier, he believed that scientific theory must be falsifiable. If it's not falsifiable, it cannot be considered a scientific theory. And one analogy that you can see this through is the white swan, black swan analogy. So for example, if you create this theory that all swans are white because it came to you in a dream or it's just an idea you had. So your goal is actually to falsify this theory. So you have to go through life looking for a single piece of evidence that falsifies this theory. So for an example, looking for a black swan. And the minute you find one black swan, that means your theory is falsified and is incorrect. However, it doesn't matter how many white swans you see. Your theory can only be corroborated, but you can never find evidence for your theory or evidence to strengthen your theory. And that's a really big issue, which we won't be looking at in this video, but in the actual training. And really what this allows is there's no induction problem and no infinite sets. So as I mentioned, he uses deductive reasoning. And because of that, you don't have to, you're not basing your theory on the few pieces of evidence that you collected, but rather you're looking for evidence to falsify your theory. And Popper also believed that there are degrees of falsifiability. So when a theory excludes more, it is more falsifiable, and that means it has greater information content. And there are two ways in which a theory can be more falsifiable. The first one is if it's more general, and the second is if it's more precise. And it's really important to understand that the two ideas do not contradict each other, because general refers to what the theory pertains to, or who in the population the theory is applicable to. And the second point, the more precise, is it's what the theory predicts. The more precise, the more the theory predicts, the more falsifiable it is. And we're going to look through some examples to make it more concrete. So the first one, for example, if you have two theories, the first theory states that all men eat lunch, and the second theory states that everyone eats lunch. Well, as you can see, the second theory is more general because it pertains to a larger group of the population. It pertains to the whole population rather than about 50% of the population. So this is another way to really look at it. So for example, if you see a man who's not eating a lunch, well, you falsify both theories. But if you see a woman that's not eating lunch, then you falsify only the second theory that is more general, and it's more falsifiable because there's more chances to falsify it. So there's more people that fall into this category. So there's more chances that you'll find one person that doesn't fit into this theory. And as you can see, any piece of evidence against the first theory, so a man not eating lunch, will also be evidence against the second theory. So there's more pieces of evidence that could be accumulated against the second theory, and that is why it's more falsifiable. The second way a theory can be more falsifiable is depending on its precision. The more precise a theory is, the more falsifiable it is. We're going to look at a different example. So the first theory states that everyone eats lunch, and the second theory states that everyone eats lunch at exactly noon or 12. And the second theory is more precise because it predicts a more specific set of circumstances. And if we go back to the Venn diagrams, you can see that the first theory will predict that people don't eat. The first theory predicts that people don't eat lunch at all. So what you have to do is you have to look at all the people and see if they eat lunch or not. And so if someone does not eat lunch at all, then you falsify the first theory, and these people fall into this smaller circle. And the second theory states that everyone eats lunch at noon. Well, if you see someone that's eating lunch not at noon, you can also falsify the second theory. So someone not eating lunch at all, or someone eating lunch at a time other than noon, will falsify the second theory. And once again, that means that there's more chances to falsify the second theory. So there are more people that, or there are more ways to falsify this theory because it's more likely that people won't eat lunch at noon. And therefore, that theory is more precise because, as you can see, it pertains to a bigger subsection and therefore has more chances to be falsified. So yeah, this is the information I'll be going over during this video, but please make sure to sign up for the full Fundamentals of Psychology course to be able to better understand all the other topics. And I will be covering all the topics both from the lectures and the textbook, as well as going through the questions that people put on Canva and the practice exam that we've been given. So yeah, the first course starts this Saturday, so please be sure to sign up.